Hey, what's going on, everyone? Axel here. Welcome to my review of Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. This is the first game in the Legacy of Kain series. It came out in 1996. Before we get started, if you want to check me out on Twitch or anywhere else, just look below in the description. You can find a link to my link tree. My Twitch page is twitch.tv/AxelAlexK, where I stream through this whole game and everything else. You can also watch the full playthrough of this game on this YouTube channel. So getting back to the game, this game I got as a kid. I actually owned the PS1 disc, but I never got all that far, and I didn't beat it until very recently. In this game, you play as Kain. He's a man that was recently killed. You actually get killed right at the start of the game and resurrected as a vampire, and then you enact your revenge on all sorts of other bad guys, essentially. It's a classic dungeon crawler. It's action adventure game. Really great. Think of it kind of like Zelda, but in a much more mature theme. So going down the list here, a lot of things I really liked about this game. The game looks awesome, in my opinion. Even today, for an almost 30-year-old game, it's certainly showing its age, but the art style it has aged pretty well, I think. You know, being a 2D overhead style adventure game, you don't run into a lot of the issues you run into with, say, like the early 3D games, where they just don't age well. Like go back and look at the stuff on the N64, for example, and try to play those 3D platformers today. It's kind of rough, or the shooter is kind of rough. But this kind of game does age very well, and I thought it still looked great. The art style, I love the atmosphere in this game as well. It's got a great soundtrack that really fits. You hear cries of terror in the background, screams over this very dark and eerie soundtrack. It's got superb voice acting, top tier voice acting in this game. Lots of enemy variety too that really gets you to approach these encounters in different ways. Some enemies you could run past, some you could not run past because they were too fast. Some had hit stuns, so you could just run up to them and do a combo. Others did not, so you had to be a little bit more evasive with how you approach them. Some spam projectiles, so you have to kind of be really strategic about it and hit them from afar. Or some were just too dangerous up close, so you had to use some spell to get through them. So you were encouraged to engage enemies in different ways, so it kept the game fresh as I played through it, which was really nice. I also think the game's length is pretty much perfect. I believe it took me somewhere between 10 and 15 hours to finish, and that's what I would expect a normal person to get through it. So that's pretty solid in terms of length. It didn't overstay its welcome, that's for sure, and at the same time, it definitely wasn't too short. The level design in the game was interesting. You have a little bit of puzzle action. I mean, it's pretty light. My only critique really about the level design is that I think it could be a little more puzzle focused. I liked how there was a lot to explore in this game. There's lots of towns. You can go into each of the buildings. There's a lot of off areas, a lot of secret caves and things, which I didn't explore a lot of those. But there is a lot of side stuff you can get to in this game. When I finished, it looked like I'd only found about a fourth of the secrets. So there's a lot more stuff you can find if you want to. There is a fast travel system in this game, and I think it was done pretty well. There's not too much backtracking in this game. There's a little bit, but not that much. And I rarely got lost as well. I only had to look at a walkthrough one time, really, maybe twice. The game doesn't hold your hand too much, but it also doesn't get you also aren't getting lost constantly. You do have to pay a little bit of attention to the narrator, especially during there's little triangles you can step on that will give you bits of the story. You should listen to the narrator because there are clues in the narration of where you should go next. But even if you miss it, once you open your map, you will see a specific color border around where you should go next. So the game kind of points you where to go in several different ways. There's a few places you can, really only one place I found that you can get stuck. And one of my major critiques is an early part of the game where you're fighting Malik. It's one of I think the second boss fight, and you have to hit him with a 4-hit combo to do any damage, and you only do damage on the 4th hit. That's probably the worst thing in the game in terms of getting stuck. I don't know how you figure that out, because a lot of the encounters in this game, you don't want to do a 4-hit combo because a lot of enemies do not have hit stun. So if you go up to them and try to do a combo, you're going to take damage. So I found myself rarely using a 4-hit combo, especially midway and late into the game, but you have to hit this enemy in a certain way with the 4-hit combo to do any damage, or you can't progress. So that's probably my biggest complaint in terms of, oh, can you get stuck? That's really the only place. After that, it was pretty much smooth sailing in terms of what I should do and where I should go. The game gives you plenty of items to play with, and you don't have to conserve them at all. Like, it gives you a lot of health power-ups, spell point power-ups, items, damage items to throw at enemies. I actually was way too conservative. If you watch my playthrough on this channel, you'll see I was way too conservative with items as I went through, and I had in some cases I had reached 99, which is the max stack of items. So feel free to spam items. It would have made my playthrough a lot easier had I not been so conservative with those. The same with spells. There's a lot of spells in the game. I did find that spell points were constantly tight. You can't spam too much. I mean, there's certainly areas you can, but you have to be a little bit careful about your spell point usage. And when it comes to the spells, only a couple are really super useful, but it is fun to have a variety of spells to play with if you want to. Some are just fun. The puzzle elements that it does have are pretty good. There's parts where you have to possess people and actually play as the enemy because you possess their body, and get to play as an enemy monster or humanoid and go through a section of a dungeon. I thought that was really cool because you actually get to play as somebody. You don't just fight these enemies. You can actually play as a demon or a humanoid or whatever, some other monster if you want to, or undead. There's certain places where you can play as a skeleton. So I thought that was really awesome. And I like also how the game incentivizes you to shapeshift a lot to avoid damage or to get to certain areas, because there's several different forms in this game. Wolf form, which kind of lets you jump over gaps. There's mist form that lets you walk through things like water without taking damage, or walk through things like spikes on the wall to not take damage. There's bat form that's basically your fast travel. So especially when it comes to mist form and wolf form, you'll use those a lot as you go through the game. And I really like that because you have to think a little bit. There's certain stages in dungeon where you're like, oh wait, I need to use mist form to get through this section. And that's really cool. It keeps it interesting. Okay, let's get into the cons now, my complaints about this game. My biggest two complaints about this game: number one, the game runs too slow. I think everything, this entire game, everything in it, Kain and the enemies, should be sped up by at least like 25%. It did feel quite slow with Kain. There was no run option, and I wouldn't want to just speed up Kain and not the enemies, because I think that would make the game even more trivial than it already is, and it's already not a super difficult game once you know how to take advantage of certain spells. But I would want Kain and the enemies, everything in the game, sped up by at least 25%, maybe a little bit more than that. My second biggest complaint about this game is the respawning enemies are quite annoying. Every time you re-enter an instance, everything respawns. And this gets really annoying when you're not sure where to go, or if you clear out a room that's full of just tons of mobs and you got to re-enter that room, it gets really annoying. I wish stuff didn't respawn so fast, or maybe less stuff respawned, or maybe stuff was a little bit weaker. When stuff respawns, it does respawn as a ghost. So you can't even get health back when you kill respawn mobs, because when you drink blood from a ghost, you get a little bit of spell points back, but you don't get health back unless you drink the blood of a enemy that's still alive. Another complaint: the weapon swapping is clunky here. For some reason, so there is a quick menu that you can use for spells, items, and shapeshifting, but there's no quick menu for the weapons. You have to go to the menu every time, and that was really annoying. There's a lot of menu, like constantly to have to swap to a menu during a boss fight, which is, it's pretty annoying. And it gets really complicated after a while, because there's certain weapons where you can't cast a spell, so you might have to unequip a weapon through the menu just so you can cast a spell. Then you cast a spell and you want your first weapon back, so you got to go back to the menu. It gets really annoying. There's also only one slot, so you can only cast like one spell or use one item at a time. It would have been awesome if you could map like at least two things to two different buttons, so you didn't have to constantly swap in whatever item or spell is in that specific hotkey. So that would be really, really cool if you could there was actually more than one assignable button to an action. One other thing I would like to see the game do differently is the story. The story starts out pretty simple, but it continues as you go through the game. It continues to get more and more complex. After every dungeon, it seemed there was another villain introduced, and then you get into time travel and all this crazy stuff. And I would have preferred a more down-to-earth, straightforward story, because I paid attention to all of the narration in the game, and I still got really confused. I didn't really understand what was going on, how all these bad guys tie together. It just felt like either more needed to be explained in the dialogue and explained better, or the story would have been simplified. I mean, maybe I'm just dumb, but after the beginning of the game, I really had problems following the story and everything that it details. Some of the spells in the game, another complaint, are overpowered. Repel is super overpowered in my opinion. It certainly seemed to be to me. This spell makes you immune to all damage, and it lasts a good while, and it doesn't cost that much SP, so you can kind of get through, any dungeon you want by just using Repel, or through boss fights by casting Repel. The only thing it doesn't save you from, I don't think it saves you from walking over spikes. I think you still take damage, and from water, but everything else, you don't take any damage. Even bosses do 0 damage against you with Repel. So it's kind of overpowered. They probably should have done something else with it. Maybe limited the use a little bit. Maybe make it more expensive. I don't know. Another thing is the energy bank item is pretty overpowered. It instantly fills all your magic. So what you can do, you get a really good weapon also at the end. No, not the end, but probably about halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through the game, called the Soul Reaver. That is a great two-handed sword that does tons of damage to enemies, but it uses a little bit of your spell power. So what you can do with this combination of overpowered items and spells, you can just use a energy bank item to get full spell points, cast a Repel, then swap to your Soul Reaver weapon, and you can be immune to damage and have a full SP bar with the best weapon in the game, and kind of murder all the bosses this way. So there's some overpowered combinations, and I think there were certain sections. I think the difficulty curve actually peaked for me in the middle of the game, and it got easier after that, especially after getting the Soul Reaver. So I think it would have been better if maybe would have been a better experience had they balanced these things a little bit better. Although there's certainly an argument to be had that, hey, it's okay for the game not to be super difficult and frustrating. So as far as this game, I mean, that's about all I had to say about it. The game, if you want to play it, it's available on GOG, so GOG. You can buy it digitally. And as I said before, I have a full playthrough here on this YouTube channel if you want to check it out. I would highly recommend the PC version. Do not play the PlayStation 1 version on the disc, and I have both. The problem with the PS1 version is it does not run very well. There's a lot of slowdown, menu lag, but if you play the PC version, it's still an amazing experience today, I thought, and it's aged really well. That's going to be it for this review, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Can't recommend this game enough. Awesome game, aside from a few issues I have with it. But if you want to check out more stuff from me, please give me a subscription. I'd really appreciate it. Also, below in the description, again, links to all my stuff in my link tree and my Twitch, twitch.tv/AxelAlexK. Hope you enjoyed. See you later, guys. Take care.